The TMJ-TMD conundrum is real and has been puzzling the dental and medical professions for decades. This is the TMJ-TMD Demystified podcast with Dr. Tony Urbanic, where we'll connect the dots between TMD symptoms and the actual cause. We'll tackle common TMD misconceptions and educate you, the practitioner, about a simple, tested, and proven TMD solution that has already provided relief to thousands of patients, while helping practitioners build an additional source of income free from insurance control. Welcome to this episode of the TMJ-TMD Demystified podcast.
Hello, TMD warriors. Welcome. I am Tony Urbanic, and this is the next episode of TMD Demystified. Today, I'm talking to you as I usually do on a Tuesday morning. And today, because of circumstances beyond my control, which I might mention in a little bit, maybe not, I am back in my doctor uniform, seeing patients, which I usually don't do on Tuesday. But on my noon break, I'm going to squeeze in this episode, which is very important to cover, on the continuing services, answering the question that we hear most often, the question most often heard by our patients in our practice and in other practices who use the Urbanic device and protocol throughout the United States is, how come no one ever told me about this before? And this is part 4 in a series of a multi-part presentation to answer that question. Because once I began thinking about the answer to the question, it could not possibly be covered in just one 20 or 30-minute presentation. As I've talked about before, the answer comes in multiple parts. Are multiple people responsible to one degree or another, to one portion or another, to the patients who want to know? They ask the question because they want to know, how come nobody ever told me about this? They don't say it offhanded. They say it because how come no one ever said about this protocol, this device, the simplicity of it, and the counter statement or the mirrored statement that they constantly make along with their question is, the only thing I regret is not knowing about this 20 years ago. This morning, I had the opportunity to see, I don't know, a half a dozen, 8 of my associates' patients, because he is tied up in our manufacturing facility this morning. And by necessity, I stepped in and saw his scheduled patients. And at least of those, let's just say, I believe it was around 8 patients, at least 4 of them had a history of TMD for longer than 20 years. There were a few youngsters. There was one 14-year-old. There was one that was 16 years old. But 4 of the patients, and the ones I'm thinking of, were females, and they had a range of history between 20 and 30 years of symptoms going back to their teens and 20s. And that these were follow-up visits. Some of them were delivery of devices, but the ones I'm thinking of were follow-up visits. And each of those follow-up visits, the patients reported at different segments of their protocol that between 50 and 80% of their symptoms were diminished or gone. And this is after they had been suffering from these symptoms for between 20 and 30 years. This is the standard around here. This is what we see on a constant basis. This is what keeps me involved. This is why I do these episodes every Tuesday for roughly 30 minutes to try to educate my colleagues, my fellow dentists, who need to see the importance of this, see the size of the problem, step up, take responsibility, and learn how to do this simple, use how to do and use this simple device and protocol. I know Some of the things that I say may sound self-aggrandizing or self-important or self-serving. Okay, that's how they sound. But my main purpose here is to get this problem solved, not only in our practice, because it's solved in our practice, but solved throughout the United States. If you do the numbers, 76 million women in the United States suffer from TMD symptoms of one kind or another. That is a large number of people. 45% of females have the problem, and how I came up with that number, and I've explained it before, but most studies, quote, statistical studies, and you know what statistics are, been described as, there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. And I'm not belating statistics. There's a purpose for statistics, but they can be manipulated. But these statistical studies, and good studies, good people, good scientists, range in the prevalence between 15 and 30%. Well, actually, it's much higher than that when you include, they include just the symptoms associated with pain in and around here, or maybe down in here. But when you include all of the history and the misdiagnosis of patients who are misdiagnosed with migraine, headaches, and Meniere's disease, the number jumps up significantly. And by my own examination and survey of patients, 45% of females have temporomandibular joint symptoms of one kind or another. Not all of them are so severe that it ruins their lives, but there is a large percentage of that 45% that is, those symptoms are ruining their lives, and they're just putting up, and the rest of them are just putting up with the symptoms when they don't have to. They're putting up with the headaches once or twice a week. They're putting up with my shoulders are sore every morning when I wake up. They're putting up with the earaches once a month. They're putting up with, oh yeah, I get dizzy, frequently, or I have constant ringing in my ears. They put up with that. They're thinking it's normal. They talk about their headaches being normal headaches. Well, there's no such thing as a normal headache. If there's a headache, there's a reason for it. They may not know the reason. It may not be TMD, but there's always a reason if you have head pain. There's always a reason if you have neck pain. There's always a reason if you have ear pain. So we're going to continue on. My excuse my little diatribe, but there are multiple components and people and institutions who are responsible for the fact that patients don't know about this simple device, protocol, and concept. I am not here to promote the Urbanic device and protocol. I am here to educate as to the concepts behind it, the concepts that you need to know, the simple concepts that you need to know. So let me just get this point made. So that people, the organizations that are responsible for intentionally or unintentionally, and some of them are responsible to do it intentionally, and some of them I covered already, and some of them do it unintentionally, unknowingly. And the groups are insurance companies, teaching institutions, hospitals, and corporate health groups. The one I'm going to speak today on, which is a little obtuse, but venture capitalists, and we're going to talk about how they come into play, and they're important in any kind of healthcare discovery and dissemination, extremely important. And they have a part to play. And then we get into the real players, which is the rest of the list includes the government, federal and state, the physicians and dentists themselves, the responsibility that they must carry, and then finally the patients, because the patients ask the question, and you can imagine what the patients would think is, how come nobody ever told me about this? And my immediate answer would be, oh, it's because of you, the patient. Well, that would, first of all, wouldn't go over very well. You can imagine. But the patients do have a part to play, and we'll cover that as the last, second to the last one. And the last one, which would be part, if I got my numbering correctly, which would be part 9. and have a lot to say about that, and that is the pharmaceutical industry. All right, and this as I speak, because I uncovered some material that's unbelievable, just unbelievable, but true, factual, can prove it, regarding pharmaceuticals and migraine headaches. And they come into part in other play. So this is a huge problem, which being ignored or shoved under the rug, intentionally suppressed by some knowingly, that the patients want to know about it, and they want to know why. I mean, I've seen 5 doctors in the past 10 years. I've seen 20 doctors in the past 10 years. I think if you follow enough of my episodes, you've heard me say a time or two, I've seen 150 doctors, and I swear that I have a patient who swears to me that over a 20-year period, she has seen 150 doctors trying to help explain, complain to 150 doctors these different symptoms, starting at the ear and running all the way down the shoulder and into the arm, ringing fullness, dizziness, that no one could explain. Amazing problem, and amazing the way it's been handled, dishandled, let's say, improperly handled for the past 70 years. I stumbled into it because I was just looking. I started to look, and what I started to uncover amazed me from the get-go. It just amazed me. It amazed me how simple this is, the concepts. The concepts behind it is what I'm here to teach, what I'm here to impart, what I'm here to tell you, that if you know these things, it becomes simple to you, and then you can make it simple to your patient, and together we can solve this problem, which to this point has been totally unsolvable. I've been invited to speak at the Chicago Midwinter Meeting 2024 in February. So I started to do a little investigation. I have not ever been to the Chicago Midwinter Meeting, although I was born and raised 30 miles outside of Chicago and spent the first 17 years of my life there. Familiar with Chicago, but never gone to the Chicago Dental Meeting midwinter. But I've been invited to speak about the Urbanic Device and Protocol and what I know, the concepts behind it, the science behind it, and in my investigation about the meeting and what other presentations regarding TMD are scheduled to be made, I ran across, I guess, what looked like the premiere was the first, a scheduled presentation. I believe it was a couple-hour presentation on TMD, which is entitled, I pulled up the PowerPoint deck, and it's entitled Temporomandibular Disorders Made Easy. I'm looking at my other computer. I literally pulled up this PowerPoint deck to read this presenter's materials to see what he had to say about TMD. Not surprisingly, in my world, in my estimation, that this rather lengthy and pedantic presentation goes over all of the bogus theories about what's going on with TMD. I didn't say that to belittle the author. Certainly I wouldn't name the author. And if you'd like to go to the meeting, it's the premier meeting, and it is entitled Temporomandibular Joint Disorders Made Easy. But after reading his slide deck, which goes on for about 60 or 70 slides, what I'm reading is he's trying to make it as difficult and non-comprehensive as possible. And if I was an unknowing dentist, young or old, who sat through this 2-hour presentation, I would be totally confused. I certainly wouldn't remember but a small portion of it. I mean, I would not remember, but like maybe 10% of what this presentation is doing. And it's definitely complicated, and it's definitely all over the board. And it covers things that have no basis in science. Basically a bunch of stuff that over the years, TMD specialists have thrown against the wall and hope that they stick. Really sounds critical, but look at this problem is super simple, and I've explained it before, and we'll talk about how the title of it, venture capitalists, come into play, and they do, because once you know the simplicity of it, once you know how easy it is to treat these folks, how successful it is, predictably successful, what you have to do is make the world aware of it. And that's where we are right now. That's where I am right now, making people aware of what I know, what our statistics are, what our experience is, the number of patients who've been successfully treated, the presentations that I've made, and basically how it works and how you can use it in a dental practice to boom your practice, to solve this problem for all the patients in your neighborhood, to make great friends and great patients, because now they think you're the world's best doctor because you solved a problem for them that they had 20 years and nobody else could solve. That's the reality of it. This is what we see around here. That's what our other doctors in the network see. And so I hope that you take what I say at face value and the purpose I have to solve the problem nationally and internationally if possible. So what part do venture capitalists come? Why are we talking about venture capitalists? First of all, maybe you not know what a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist is a company or a group of small group of people who take money, capital, and invest it into future endeavors that have the possibility of increasing value, and they provide the capital or the money to assist the originator to bring it to as broad a public and do all of the appropriate things to make it available to the public so that it expands rapidly and hopefully brings profit to the venture capitalist. Well, you may or may not be aware, but I brought this device protocol and the science behind it all on my own for the past 12 years. And I'm now at the point with the development of this is bringing it to as many people as possible. So I'm considering, what it's going to take to do that. And what it's going to take to do that is to scale it up as it needs to be as rapidly as possible. It's going to take some capital. So when the patient asks, and this is my point about this, when the patient asks, how come nobody ever told me about this? The part of the answer is, well, there has not been enough capital to put together the awareness programs, which can be many awareness programs. You can talk about marketing. Marketing is nothing more than awareness programs. So marketing is a whole science behind it, and it's a whole body of knowledge. I have a daughter who's in marketing, and I know little to nothing about marketing, actual marketing, but we do know that when you take a process or a device or a service and you want to disseminate it as rapidly and as widely as possible, you have to apply marketing, which is nothing more than awareness, making others aware, both doctors and patients aware that it exists, and then they can inspect it, they can look it over, decide whether or not it's important, whether or not they want to do it, whether or not it has value. But you have to start out with making others aware. And basically, I've already worked out, how it works, why it works, put together the FDA cleared 510K approved marketing of the device, patented it, and developed a manufacturing facility to make now this device on the computer, CAD/CAM, 3D printed, and available not only to myself and my associate in this practice, but other doctors who want to use this technology, patented technology, for their patients. So now that little piece which goes along with the technology. That's just a piece of resin. It used to be a piece of acrylic, but a piece of resin that goes along with the technology, which needs to be considered. The device itself is nothing more, nothing less than a tool. If you know how to use the tool, you get the response. So venture capitalists, or capital of any way, but venture capitalists are the most common method for a medical device to be expanded throughout the United States and throughout the developed world. So when the patient asks, how come nobody ever told me about this? The answer is, well, the venture capitalists have not been involved in this because everybody knows when it comes to TMD, nothing works. That is one of the major issues of bringing this knowledge to the forefront, is that when you literally just say TMD or TMJ or jaw joint problems, everyone, the dentists, the physicians, the patients themselves, because who have the problem, they already know nothing works because they've seen a half a dozen doctors over 10 years and had all kind of things done or recommended, which are not effective. And of course, the venture capitalists are nothing more than people, and they already know nothing works. And so the venture capitalists have no interest in spending their capital on a problem that everybody knows nothing works. I don't blame them. I mean, it makes sense to them. It makes sense to me, but it is not effective. It is not effective. So they are one of the major perpetrators of how come the word cannot get out there. And they don't do it intentionally. They do it in a self-protective way. Their business is taking their capital and making more capital, expanding their capital. And the United States of America is a capitalistic system. I think it should be. I want it to be. Nothing wrong with that. But you can see how they play their part in limiting the amount of awareness that needs to go out. In this episode and this podcast that you watch, and I hope you look at more than just this one, I am now recording podcast episode number 124 over the past 2 years. So we're into our third year of doing this. The other perpetrators are who do the suppression intentionally or unintentionally, that we're going to talk about later on, are the government themselves, who monitor, increase or decrease healthcare coverage of various kinds. Physicians and dentists, patients, and pharmaceuticals. We'll cover at a later time. But you can see that when you have a protocol that is, and in this case, protocol and device that is disruptive in both the dental industry and the medical industry, that it does not lend itself, because it is disruptive, to the interests of other people and organizations, that they have to change. They have to change their point of view. They have to understand what it is that's being presented in front of them. And people are people, and they're hard to change. They want things to stay the same. They want to be the same. As I've commented before, this problem of TMD is actually larger than the problem that's Invisalign solved for the majority of people. Now, every dentist in the country, or just about every dentist in the country, wants to join the Invisalign movement. Invisalign being a specific company, but now the generic name for any orthodontic aligners. And now there are probably somewhere between 150 and 200 orthodontic aligning companies because of the success of Invisalign And to give you an example, Invisalign was suppressed by the orthodontic community, orthodontists and orthodontic organizations, for over 10 years before enough push and capital was put into Invisalign so that it came into the awareness of just a few, and an agreement of just an increasing number, but started out with just a few dentists who saw the value in Invisalign. And it was actually documented, suppressed by orthodontists and the orthodontist community for 10 years. And now every dentist, and just about every dentist in the country, wants to do Invisalign. And our experience is very similar, and the number of people who need their symptoms of TMD to go away and be diminished is vastly more than the number of people who need their teeth straightened. And that is a fact. Just 76 million women in the United States of America would like to have those symptoms that they deal with every day go away. I made my point. I hope I have. I hope I haven't rambled too much. In the next episode, we will talk, have it scheduled, we will talk about what the part to play that our government, who monitors healthcare and does things to either increase or decrease healthcare in the country, good or bad, have to play in answering the question, how come nobody else ever told me about this? How come I never heard about this before? If you have questions, I welcome your questions. I welcome your comments. I welcome your criticisms. I am well able to field criticism about what I know, what I teach, where it comes from, the statistics and the science behind it. And I would look forward to a discussion on criticism held in a civil way, no problem. I can be reached at tony@tmjservices.net. If you'd like to join our network of doctors, growing network of doctors who are interested in doing this, I have actually 4 Zooms scheduled within the next 2 days to doctors who are interested in joining our network. If you'd like to be one of those doctors and ask questions or get a Zoom with me, you can do that off of our website, which is www.urbanictmj.com. If you'd like to talk with our Director of Education and Marketing, let's call it Director of Education and Awareness, and she is Dr. Naomi Williams. She can be reached at naomi@tmjservices.net. We love to talk to doctors who are interested, to educate them. I know that the problem is the vast majority, almost all of you who are watching this, think this is a complicated problem. One of my doctors who we'll be talking to in the next day or two actually already dropped on me, I don't know whether I can do this. I don't want to be married. I don't want to be married to a TMJ patient. That comment really didn't surprise me, but it made me realize that that is really one of the reasons that doctors shy away from doing TMD. They think that this is not only just complicated, but they just don't want to get married to one of these patients who they think are just people who complain all the time and nobody can ever resolve their symptoms, right? Everybody knows nothing works. I can't blame him for making that remark, but it stunned me that he made it. That was his big concern. He didn't want to be married to a TMJ patient. And anything farther than truth. I mean, we love our TMJ patients. We encourage them to come back. We hardly ever see them. And the only time we do see them is when they lose or break the device. And they come back for another device. Getting a little off center here. In any case, that's it for today. I'm going to plan on doing another episode next Tuesday morning. Hopefully I'll be out of my uniform and back into my civvies. I enjoy my uniform once a week, but I enjoy my civvies the rest of the week. For that, I look forward to speaking to you next time. I am Tony Urbanic, and this is TMD Demystified.